All right. Now call the CRA Advisory and CRA Board Joint Workshop to order for September 11th. Please rise for the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Stay with me. Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. Lord, we ask that your grace and your mercy would be upon Mr. Kirk's family, Father. Ask your grace and mercy be upon this country, Lord. Lord, we ask that you would just make a mighty move in this country, that you would root out this evil that would cause a person to do this type of thing, Lord, in Utah, Father. Lord, we ask that you would bring unity, Lord, to this town, Father, to this state, Lord, and to this country. Ask you to bless each and every person here, Father, and ask for this in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. You will please call the roll.
Yes, thank you. For the CRA Board, Member McGuire.
Here.
Member Mercure.
Here.
Member Taylor.
Here.
Vice Chair Bernard.
Here.
Chair Anderson.
Here.
For the CRA Advisory Board, Member Lamphere. Member Jarrett. Member Sevigny. Member Shepard. Member Downey. Vice Chair Snell. Chair Hayes.
We have more than a quorum. All right. Jessica, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Thank you so much for being here. I know had a lot of meetings lately, so I appreciate it. I'm not going to know which way to look, so you'll have to forgive me. Tonight's conversation is just that. It's a conversation. No decisions need to be made tonight, but I have two boards I answer to, and so I thought it would be beneficial for both boards to be on the same page, or at least have the opportunity to talk through the logistics of potential changes. As of right now, we're all well aware that the two grants that we have available are the facade grant and the demo grant. Those are still on here, but I'd want to take some time to talk through the other opportunities. Can you start the slideshow, Matt? All right, so obviously the purpose of the CRA is to eliminate slum and blight. That's what we're going to focus on today. Revitalize neighborhoods and grow the tax base by reinvesting locally, generating tax increment into projects that make the community safer, stronger, and more vibrant. Ultimately, we want to attract people, and we want to increase the private investment that we have in downtown in the Main Street district, as well as the South Side district. So all of these, I've spoke with our attorney multiple times. I think he's on the call here today. I also spoke with him for an hour. Andrew Hand is joining right now from Cliff Shepard, which is our CRA attorney's office. And I spoke with him an hour today, going through each one of these in detail. The conversation or the conclusion of that call was, as long as these grants are in the Florida statute of 163 and in our redevelopment plan, we can find a way to make them work. Now, that doesn't mean as written, we may want to massage them in a way. They are going to need to approve these. So the whole point of this meeting is to get your pulse on if you want these grants, if you feel like they're going to be beneficial. And once we decide that, then we can send it over to the attorney to get exact verbiage for then the CRA board to approve, so that we can move forward with whatever grant plan that we're going to move forward with next year. So align direction, update the resolution. We'll meet at the CRA board meeting, hopefully to finalize this. If not, we'll have to kick it to next month, which means we're running out of time. If we are not able to get this done, then we may need to keep pushing it out. But I want everyone to feel at least comfortable or understand or have the opportunity to ask questions. So feel free to do that. This is not going to be just me talking, I hope. So how can we use these CRA? And we're going to talk specifically about the CRA grants. And I have a slide here that we'll talk about that. But the CRA grants in a way that unlocks the most private investment across multiple developments, so that every dollar multiplies. And that's really what we're looking at in terms of grants. I think the way we've been doing them, which the attorney and I spoke a lot about today too, may not be well, we know it's not the most beneficial way to increase development or tax dollars. I think it makes the citizens, it gives them a nice bonus, painting their houses. But there's ways we've done that long enough. And we've also given quite a bit to nonprofits, which do not contribute to the tax base. So how can we take these grant programs and ensure that there's an investment on the other side of that? So how do we make sure Avon Park truly lives up to the name City of Charm? We're going to name a gateway sign City of Charm. So how are we doing that in our downtown core outside of what we've already allocated? Next slide. So over the past 5 years, this is where we've been. So we'll go past, present, future. We've spent $16,000 at the airport. We're not going to talk much about the airport today. On Main Street, the total expenditures were a little over $600,000. And then in Southside, it was almost $350,000. So what I want you to ask yourself is, and I think we've done, from what I hear, the CRA has done the best we could with what we have. And that's the results. And I guess I want you to ask yourself, can you see a measurable difference? And if we don't want to go where we've been, where are we going and how are we going to get there? Next slide. So presently, this is where we're at for 24, 25. We haven't spent much money. We know that. And then we have a lot of allocations for next year. And the airport, we still have $250,000, and that does 1.7 in Main Street and over $500,000 in Southside. We've talked about this a lot in every workshop we've been in. We've talked a lot about it at the budget workshops. And so next slide is the future. We'll start with Main Street. So for next year, the amount of TIF that we bring in is almost $600,000 in Main Street. What we have balance available is $1.4 million. So total that we have to spend is let's just call it $2 million in Main Street. What was allocated in our budget allotments were most of that, half of that is going to parks, which is $925. That is for pickleball, splash pad, and we allocated some to Walnut Park. So half of the Main Street budget is already in parks. We have 15% of that budget in signage. So that is our wayfinding signage we talked about and any other like branding initiatives that the CRA wants to take on for Main Street. 15% of that in the mall, and then 7% in operating. But where we're going to focus today is the 18% we have allocated in grants. Next slide. And Southside, we have it's doubled almost in its revenue. It's TIF revenue that's going to be bringing in. So that's almost $500,000. And then our fund balance there is, let's call that $350,000. So there's a little over $800,000 in total to spend in Southside this upcoming year. The percentage breakdown of that, 38% of that, the bulk of that is in the lighting improvements and memorial improvements. The gardens would be the community garden they want and the memorial garden. There is a signage for banners and wayfinding. 25% of that was for the 2 piers and a seawall. And then 8% of that will be for grants. So that's where we'll focus our efforts today, and 5% for operating. So, yeah.
That you have there, the lighting / memorial.
Mm-hmm.
That's the lighting, that's the decorative lighting on memorial, or is that saying like a lighting and a memorial of some sort, initiating a road, a memorial like that way?
Yeah, that was 180 that was coming out of infrastructure to do lighting on memorial.
It's not a memorial.
Yes, and there's an additional 90-some thousand for lighting for a better pathway to schools, because we had heard that discussion as well in Southside. And then Memorial was actual improvements to Memorial.
So that's
Drive.
coming out of the CRA, not the infrastructure.
Correct.
And why was it not coming out of infrastructure?
It originally was, and then there was a discussion that happened during the budget process that it was moved to South Side.
Okay.
I believe there's around 6 million. Because that money's being allocated elsewhere or saved for future projects. We do have the potential for the wastewater treatment plant to have cost overruns, and we could use it for that.
And that wastewater was how much?
We don't have a final number on the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. It's in 30% design right now with Kimley Horn. We're probably looking at upwards of $20 million, and we have a grant for 11.5 right now.
So can you tell me, just because I don't know, and if nobody else knows, then I don't feel dumb, but how does the infrastructure get refunded? Meaning, how does it get replenished every year?
There's a an amount of funding that comes from the state. I don't know the number off the top of my head, how much that is every year that goes into the infrastructure
So that
fund.
constantly gets replenished
Correct.
then every year.
Yes,
So even if we were to take some of the infrastructure amounts out to go toward the things that are in the CRA fund, it would still be replenished at the end of the year.
yes.
Well, without knowing how much is getting replenished, I mean, you're
It
doing the exact
look-
same thing as the CRA. CRA gets replenished every year as well.
It looks like I have a little spreadsheet here on my phone.
But the CRA won't be around for how much longer?
2025, there was 1.5 million. In 24, there was 1.6 million. 23, 1.6. 22, 1.5. That was the revenue that came into the infrastructure fund.
So you're not talking about enough to do the wastewater treatment upgrades that we would have to do.
But we're not planning on spending every single dime out of the.
All right, we're getting a little sidetracked here. We're talking about CRA.
I just want to correct myself. The current balance is 7.5 million, not 6.
Okay.
Okay, so we will just, and so what I want to do here, hopefully you've had time to review this. We're just going to go through it. And we can stop and talk about it as you would wish. If you have questions, concerns, I will answer the best of my ability, but we will call on our attorney at the phone if we need him.
Okay.
All right, so we'll start with the top, which is the handbook, and I'm calling it a handbook because, well, I have 5 grants proposed. Next slide, Matt. Starting with the demolition grant, then the facade grant and interior, we're going to remove the word art and just call it public beautification and activation. Development TIF incentive grant. Before I get into this, I will say, I want to reiterate that what we're doing right now, the primary impact we're making is on residential pressure washing and windows. The attorney did have some feedback on us replacing residential windows. So there's things that we're doing now that if it were to come in front of a legal board, it may not be the best use of funds. So CRAs are very gray. As we know, they tried to take away all the funding. So what we can and cannot do is a case-by-case basis, and it makes it very hard to get information, black and white information on broad ideas. So we'll start with the demolition. We'll start with the handbook. Let's just go through from the beginning. So we have the 5 grants that I'm proposing. The program overview, I'm not going to read this line by line, but just stating that the programs are authorized under Florida statutes under Chapter 163. The grant cycle, we initially had proposed October. We've missed that date. So now I'm saying November. If we can get the resolution, because we still have to go through an attorney, we have to finalize the application, what we're offering, and then get the resolution amended or updated so that we can then start going out and advertising what we have available so that we get the applications in. So assuming we're able to do that by, have this live by November 1st, that's what's in the handbook currently. And then the applications would close, so we'd no longer accept it January 31st. So that gives us 3 months for this to become citywide knowledge that we have a new grant program. It's open. Here's how you apply. You guys would get together on February 12th to do a joint scoring. There's a scoring rubric in here on how this would work. And then the CRA board would finalize the awards at your normal CRA board meeting based on the feedback from those scores. The timeline I have in here is that projects must begin with 6 months of approval and finish in 12 months. A one-time 90-day extension may be granted for active progress. We don't have a lot of this criteria in our existing grant, so it makes it very hard for me to navigate all the different grants that we have right now and to ensure consistency. So what I'm looking for is that I have a baseline for all grants, whether it be to a nonprofit, to a resident, or to a commercial business. So our eligible projects that I have on here are going to center around improvements of the viable right-of-way, public right-of-way, ADA safety, compliance, and code issues, and interior remodel, demo of unsafe public art. Again, we're going to remove the word art because it has to be associated with elimination of slum and blight. Murals could fit underneath that definition. A lot of cities do it, but our attorney specifically has asked that we maybe steer away from public art in terms of sculptures and murals and stick more to beautification of a public improvement that's not a facade improvement. If that's clarity for you. It wasn't for me, but we'll get there.
Jessica, this is Andrew. I'm here if there's any questions or if there's anything I can assist with, just to let you know.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for being on the call. Interior upgrades and then private development projects. I will say during the course of my research, and I've been here now 5 months. Yes, go ahead. Oh yeah, sorry, Bill. What do you mean by that? As the city?
Are you talking about for like Donaldson Park projects and stuff like that? So our actual projects, are we being held to the same timeline?
I would say no. No, I don't think so. And the reason for the timeline is because what's happening, it's not super common, but we approve grants and then nothing happens for quite some time. And we have 4 months in there, but that's not been the standard of holding people accountable to that. And there's a lot of projects that can't be done in 4 months. So that needs to be updated. Yeah. Of course.
I have one question. We probably need to just specify a little, and I'm not sure the exact terminology, but to begin a project means a lot of things to a lot of different people.
Mm-hmm.
So we may need to specify what begin the project means. Is it pull a permit? Is it, break ground? What exactly does that mean to everybody?
Absolutely. And in the application itself, there will be a question about those timelines. And so as you're scoring them as a group, those are things that you can ask, and you can take that into your consideration of how, if it needs to be a longer timeline, or if it's going to take too long, if you like it at all. You have your eligible projects in here, which we just talked about, and your not eligible projects. I will just encourage you to read through that. Obviously, we can only do this in CRA boundaries. Applying during this cycle does not guarantee funding. These are all pretty much boiler template type restrictions. Everything must be current. There should be an active tenant or an executed lease approved occupancy in place within 180 days of project's completion. And what I'm thinking about going through this, here was my thought process, is we have a few, if we're focusing on our corridors, what's come of these workshops is that we need to fix what we currently have. So how are we going to do that? How can we invest or be a partner with those that want to beautify Avon Park? We have 3 primary large buildings between Donaldson Park and let's say the railroad tracks. Is that Lake Avenue? And what incentive can we offer outside of our facade demo grant that would potentially entice somebody to want to start work or decrease the vacancy there in those buildings?
Can I ask a couple questions before you get down too far? As far as interior upgrades, I feel like that's a really broad term. Interior upgrades could mean a bunch of different things, which I know you have a checklist on your application that lists like electrical and plumbing and things like that. But I know it's been ingrained in my mind that it's interior upgrades that are supposed to fix hazards to the health, safety, and wellness of people. So is the attorney going to help us come up with a list of viable? I mean, because somebody could come up with an off the wall thing. Well, some individuals with seizures, they can't see certain colors or strobe lights and things like that. So they can justify just about anything for the health, safety, and wellness of people. So is there a general list or a specific list, I guess, not general, that would qualify and still keep us within the law as far as what's allowable?
I would say yes, and we'll lean on the attorney to help. Whatever is approved in here at the final will be whatever they're comfortable with defending if it were to come in front of a court of law.
Okay.
What I can assist and offer you there is really, you're looking for building code compliancy, looking for compliancy with life and safety matters when it comes to code, bringing it up to speed for that. And sort of that is the realm that you're looking through the framework along with the statute. And so where you go outside those boundaries, that's when it becomes problematic. Just as an example, if the plumbing is problematic in a building, and it needs an upgrade for safety, that is defensible. If you have perfectly good plumbing and maybe it's outdated or it works, but it's not a matter of, maybe plumbing is not the best example. Let's just say you have wiring and so forth that has maybe some kind of dated insulation on it, but it's okay and it works. If that is upgraded or replaced and it goes beyond just getting it up to being safe, that's where you can run into some issues. So yes, there's a framework to look at it, but you also have to look at the unique aspects of the structure and what exactly is being replaced and why it's being replaced becomes important.
So then would it be, or should it be, a requirement to have an inspection from somebody from the building department then?
I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, there's going to have to be some sort of verification of the state of the building and, as part of the application process. And so, knowing the conditions and what you're getting for your money, since the CRA money and public funds are going into, you have to know what's going to be the return on that. And so there has to be some sort of verification, whether it's an inspection or otherwise, so that what the condition is and why it's being upgraded or replaced or remediated.
Okay.
I got one question on that line. So you mentioned replacing electrical. So let's say that electrical is inside of a wall and for whatever reason that electrical is bad. I mean, you're going to have to, in some cases, tear out all the walls to replace that electrical. Does it qualify to cover that and the insulation that would then go back into that wall and fire suppression and yada, yada, yada?
Potentially, and I mean, if we're looking at a situation where the electrical is not safe, there's probably other problems with the structure that are gonna, have to be brought up to speed too. And so some of these things might work hand in hand. I mean, I usually, if there's a electrical problem that bad, there are also structural problems with the walls and so forth, that coincide. And so, each project is unique and has to be evaluated through that unique lens. But I mean, sure, if you have to do some demo to get to something to upgrade it, then that is defensible and achieving the desired result if that's something that you want to give a grant for.
Bill, did you have a question or Charles?
Yep.
Building like on Main Street, talking about renovating inside that building. If you break the 50% rule where you're putting more money into it than for over 50%, it's 51%, the whole percent of the. So you would have that to deal with. You've got ADA, you've got NFPA, the fire protection codes and all that, as far as building over a certain size, whatever. If it's over the 50%, then it could get very expensive to, do just one small building
Sure.
on Main Street. So it would probably be beyond our ability to give a grant that would maybe stipend that. So they could do business on Main Street, but, talking about grants far exceeding what, we would have to give out. But again, the scoring system and how you have it set up would allow you to do maybe one or two projects a year or every 2 years, allocated it out. To do it that way.
Yeah.
But the more you go in, the more has to come out.
Agreed.
Mhm. So real quick, before we move on, the slide that you showed that said $350,000 for Main Street, you're thinking all of these grants, which I know there was like an extra 49, I think, for demos and the budget that we approved. All of these grants, you're thinking that's the funding that would be used for it. Because a lot of those things in that 1.9, you had already allocated to Donaldson Park and the signage and all that kind of stuff. So that money you're trying to set aside for those special projects. And then you're looking for grants for this additional 350 for Main Street and approximately 70 for South Side.
Yes, so Main Street was 350. That included the 49,000 in
okay.
demo. So it was 300 for the facade grants and then 49 for demo. And then we had 200 in South Side. 180 is going to be used for lighting. So there's only 20,000 for facade grants. And then there was 50,000 for demos. So that's where the 70,000 came from in South Side.
Okay.
And so with the 350 in Main Street and the 70,000 in South Side, people are going to be coming to the CRA asking what we can do to help them. And so this is just hopefully getting more bang for our buck in terms of revitalization and reducing slum and blight.
I just want to point out that those are the numbers for this year. I mean, if you guys adopt or change this grant program in any way, it would roll into future years and future funding opportunities.
Yeah. So then one other thing on not eligible projects, we should probably include on there like soft business expenses, like, business plans and permits and zoning fees and impact fees. As not being part of the grant, in my opinion.
Okay.
Like some of these projects, the engineering costs could basically eat away your entire grant amount that was given to you.
Okay. Does anybody have any specific questions? Well, let's get to the funding structure. So we're no changes to at least 2 quotes for licensed and insured contractors must be submitted. Awards based on lowest qualified quote.
My only note on that is that the contractor's documentation has to be submitted when the application is submitted. Rather than waiting until we're trying to make a decision.
Meaning license and insurance.
License, insurance, any other regulatory agencies that they have to answer to, as well as for their subcontractors, whoever they're using. They have to include all of that in their package.
Sounds good. Yeah, I have it listed right now that it's not considered a complete package until all of that is in here. So
So has there been any discussion as to the percentage of funding here? Was this 25%, 50%, 100%? I didn't see anything like that.
are you talking about the amount of the grants?
Right.
Okay, so funding structure is next. And that should be in your package as well, underneath rules and eligibility. So for standard structure, it's what we're doing currently. It's the first 5,000 is fully funded. So that way we're not shocking anyone saying we don't have that grant anymore. We do this year. And then 50% owner match is required for projects above the first 5,000. I did plug an incentive for legacy credit that reduces the required match by 5% for every 5 years of continuous ownership. So for example, if you've owned a building for 25 years, then it's a 25% match, just for being loyal to Avon Park.
So with that, should it be a legacy credit, not only owning the building, but having the building in operating condition? Because that's what's contributed to Avon Park. I feel like that would be worth rewarding.
Yeah. And I'm guessing you want commercial only for the legacy credit.
I would say so. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I agree with that.
Yeah, even multifamily would be considered commercial. So yeah.
So if it's been operating for that time period.
Actually
And-
having a business or having tenants, having a business license, contributing.
Anybody else about the legacy credit? Reducing the discount?
Jessica, I have a question. So we're not giving out a grant just because you own a building and you're not operational, right? We're not giving those grants out, right? You know, we have a lot of vacant buildings on Main Street. We're not giving grants out to those people if they're not opening, if they're not in operation. We're not giving grants out unless they plan to open up. Okay.
Yeah, so in the eligibility part, it says an occupancy plan within place in 180 days. Dr. Kelly and I did talk about, well, what happens if they don't have it occupied within that 180 days, and then the grant will rescind and the funds will be reallocated. So we will not give the funds until the occupancy is there.
Okay.
So even if they receive the CO, even if they can move in the building, we're not going to give them any funds until they actually have people in the building.
That's how I have it written, but it's up to you guys to decide how you like that, if that makes sense. So again, thinking through, and I'm just going to talk about 2 large buildings that are vacant right now. We have the Guelph building, and then we have Fern and Fern. And Bill Owens' lot is also for sale. So what type of incentives do we currently have to get that up and operational? Currently, we have $2,000 per storefront. That's what we have to offer. So right next to the Brickell. I did look into the Brickell building, which was a city project, I believe, and that was purchased for $370. I guess that's $370, and then there was some parking allocation for drainage and parking. So Daniel Phillips had stated it was close to $500,000 was the city's investment into that. And if you look now, that's the biggest building bringing in new business into downtown. And so I think it's been successful, but it was a big investment on the city's behalf. And so when we look at these other buildings, that's something else we have to think about. A lot of CRAs, most CRAs, and Ms. Attorney can clarify this, do property acquisition. That's the safest and easiest way to improve downtown districts. I didn't put it on here just because I was thinking of alternative ways. First of all, we don't have the funds to purchase buildings. We're talking about $350,000. That's not enough to purchase property in downtown currently, especially with those three we're talking about, one of them not even being for sale. So what can we do with the $350,000 that's going to make a measurable difference? And maybe, like you said, maybe that's just two really big projects with the assumption they're not getting any money until the building is up and operational. It doesn't cost us any until it's occupied and there's occupancy in place.
Sure.
Sorry, the occupancy that we discussed would be 180 days. They have to have occupancy?
That's what I have in here.
Yeah,
currently.
okay.
Yeah.
I just,
No, they could, under the circumstances, say they're not ready. They could come and ask for an extension, meaning we're holding those funds. So maybe it takes them 6 or 8 months. It'd be up to the board to decide how you would want to do that at that time. Again, we've never done this, so I'm just trying to make this up as I go, to be completely honest.
And
So
then I think you have it somewhere in here. I don't remember what the exact place, but you also have criteria to where they have to maintain it for so long. So I know like with the SHIP program, it used to be a grant. It's not a grant anymore. It's a loan, but it used to be a grant to where they would give you closing costs to purchase a new home. So that helped new home buyers purchase homes. They had to maintain the home and maintain ownership and live in the home for 10 years. And then they would forgive those closing costs.
mhm.
So I think we need I think Mr. Snell talked about it last time with giving businesses the money, them opening, and then kind of like closing right back down. I know the building would look nicer. However, is that really what the purpose of what we're doing here? We're trying to get, businesses down there and actual traffic and things like that. I think we need to think of some kind of criteria, whether it's, if we call it a grant, but if they sell the business or if they close down or whatever, maybe it has to be paid back. I thought you had something in here with every year kind of like was 20%
There
off
is.
or something like that.
Mhm.
I don't know if I don't see it under this section, so I don't know if it applies to all of the grants or if that was just one particular.
Yeah,
permit.
it's in the oversight and protection paragraph. For grants greater than 25,000, improvements must be maintained for 5 years. If the property is sold or transferred within 5 years of the project completion, the applicant must repay 20% of the grant award for each year or a portion thereof remaining in the 5-year maintenance period as outlined in the required CRA grant agreement. For those larger grants, they will need to go under a grant contract, just like we have with Lakeside or the Historical Cemetery, the Baseball Museum, the Jacaranda. So those would fall under those guidelines.
So as far as maintaining the improvements, we could also put in some kind of criteria as far as like commercial properties have to maintain a current business license, or they have to operate with normal regular business hours, or if it's a residential facility, they must maintain a certain, percent occupancy to show that they are actively still contributing to Avon Park.
We can certainly put it in there. I think enforcement becomes the issue at that point. How do we know, or how do we keep up with that? And then how do we
Well,
enforce
I
it?
think you have in here that I think you said you have in here somewhere that code enforcement has the right within the 5 years to. Dr. Kelly shaking
It's in
her
that
head.
same section. CRA staff may conduct unannounced inspections before, during, after, or during the construction maintenance period.
So that maintenance, congratulations, Randy, you just got a new title anyway. We just redid your, specifications.
And the paragraph above it has code enforcement conducts final inspections prior to payment, if that's what you're thinking of.
Well, I mean, I'm even thinking through the 5 years, because if they get money and then they open up and then they close down in 60 days or 30 days or even a year, I don't feel like us giving them a huge amount of money for them only to remain open, and then it becomes an empty building like the ones that we already have. Sure, the building might be maintained and it's standing, but what is it contributing to Avon Park as far as businesses, or if it's a multifamily housing unit or whatever it is?
Jessica, I kind of agree with what Brittany said, because I think we got Shelley mentioned at one of the meetings, I think it was Shelley, we got some businesses here on Main Street that they don't open for whatever reason. So if they're gonna come and get a grant and still make the decisions whether they want to open or not, how is it benefiting us? And with the one that Brittany is referring to, they followed the guidelines that was set in place at that time. They came in and got the grant money to build out. They did exactly that. And after they built out, there was nothing in place to tell them that they have to open up the business. So they took the money and walked, never opened up the business.
I think
So how is it benefiting?
I think you're talking about like they would open up, but it would only be on very restricted hours, like 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock, Monday through Thursday, right? So everybody wasn't getting the chance to utilize that business fully, just people who don't work, right? So yeah, they need to be open for everybody to utilize the business.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if we're giving you a nice chunk of money to help you out in your business, you should at least think about who gave you the money and try to service the people in the town.
I think there's a way to structure the grant payments. So let's say they're open for a year, they get 20%. Let's say it's a much larger dollar amount, because we don't really care about the 5,000. Let's say it's a $50,000 grant. We give them $10,000 a year for the first 5 years to help offset their costs, as long as they're open and operating and doing what we want them to do
I like
for the
that.
community.
Yeah, I like that idea a
There's
lot.
a way.
Okay.
I mean, the only problem with that is that it kind of defeats the purpose of offsetting that getting open portion. So, I mean, if we have a contract with them, I'm sure we put it in the contract that it would have to be repayable if they didn't follow the guidelines for so many years. I know it's easier to not give it to them than to take it back,
Right.
but if a business is trying to open and if they have $100,000 bill that they have to pay and they're getting this $50,000 grant, everybody knows the first 5 years of operating a business, you usually aren't making a profit.
Yes, you can put that in the contract. That's the short answer. I think for these larger dollar amounts that we're talking about, you might want to put some type of lien on title, so that if they do go under and they sell or it's foreclosed, that we are made whole.
Right.
So they would get how much at the beginning?
That's
If-
what we're
if-
trying to decide.
Well, because I'm thinking if we give them half at the beginning to get them started, and then half at the end of the year, and then at the end of the next year, then they would get the whole amount. Or maybe break it down, every 6 months. They would get a portion.
It's really just a formula, and you're looking at how much money versus how much risk you want the city to take in incentivizing businesses to come here. So, I mean, that's really what you're looking at, is how you want to structure this. I mean, it can be done multiple different ways, but you just have to balance how much money against how much risk.
My only concern with lien on title is, like, say for example, 1 West Main Street, which is Fernando's building. You put a lien on the title. I don't care. I'm not going to sell it anyway. I'm going to keep it
Exactly.
forever.
Exactly.
So we still wouldn't get our money back then.
But
I
if
mean-
they keep it forever, then
I mean,
Well-
because they've had that building for a long time. They have. If they decide to bring somebody in, it doesn't work, they close down. Well, it doesn't matter to me, because guess what? I'm not getting rid of the building. So you can lien it all you want to.
so it's a different owner now.
Who owns it?
so there was a divorce.
Right,
and
and
the-
Mrs. Fernandez owns it.
Correct. But
Right.
previous to that,
They were married and he owned it.
and he was in control of it.
Right.
So for
So
lack of
that's
a better
one
term,
thing
that's a different owner.
Jeff does on the other, but my point is, I'm just I'm just thinking about the lien on title.
Okay, so then to play into that, I have notes on another page, which might be getting ahead of ourselves, but if these buildings, if it's a huge project, right? And our dollars are a small drop in the bucket compared to what this actual project is going to cost. We need to ensure that they have the financial backing. I know there's a question on there that you say, how do you plan to do that? But what are we going to require from them? Maybe a letter of credit, some kind of way that we know for sure that they have the financial ability to do the rest of it and not just that little bit that we're contributing to.
Sure. So if you want to set a threshold at whatever that level is, 50,000, 25,000, you could require some type of pro forma, proof of financial wherewithal, whether that's a line of credit, whether it's their bank account where they show us they got $1 million sitting in it. But I would absolutely request some type of pro forma.
That is how it's.
Well, that's not necessarily the case because in some of these, rebuilding grants, the requirement is not necessarily that the building is fully functional and open per se, according to the grant. You could be used for a portion of the rebuilding. Is that right?
I mean, the way I have it written right now is it's a reimbursement grant, so it's fully funded, and then the portion of the grant gets paid back once.
But they don't have to have an open working business at the end of that. They're just simply rehabbing the building.
The way it's written now is they have to be open within 180 days
Yes.
and have tenants.
So no matter
or-
what they're asking a grant for, it has to result in a business being opened.
I guess that would depend on what we're actually willing to give a grant for.
So, and that's kind of the point, is that at the end of the day, we don't really win unless a new business is opened. Right. So everything would really have to be tied to that, or it's not really worth anything. Otherwise, you're just simply helping people shuffle the building around to sell it or to do whatever. But
Right.
that's not really what we're after,
Right.
the way I understand it. Say that again.
I think they just have to be open within 180 days is what you said, right, Jessica? And then after they are open, then they get reimbursed is how it's written.
Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Maybe try and make admirable and get it done. You still have to take money. You don't pay down, CEO, something.
Right.
That's true.
I don't know where I'm losing the lack of trust you might have. They'll have to know what's out. You have those two criteria.
I guess my concern and what Bernice was talking about is those businesses who may open up just this much of time, or just open just to get that reimbursement, but then maybe shut the building right back down, which would then turn around and allow them to sell that building for a profit because we just paid for all the major upgrades that they just needed. That money goes into their account. I mean, it's all about having to trust a business, but I feel like if we had some kind of a letter of credit that was verifying that they were financially able to do this project, but then also having some kind of stipulation for them to remain open, remain operable for a certain amount of time so that we feel like we actually got the goodie back for the town. If a new business opens up and they're open for at least 5 years, well, then that's encouraged other businesses on Main Street to rehab their buildings and open up and people to refresh their buildings and things like that.
you're gonna choose mine. Money's gonna start out pretty thin, but you,
Mhm.
somebody has to come with a minute.
Mhm.
So if you make mistakes, you make mistakes. You say you look at it, you learn from not pass it, you learn.
So
I know that we're dealing with $3.5 million, we're dealing with $350,000, trying to get an initiative started. That's one, but it's not fully fund things. Trying to establish some kind of history currently that'll carry it forward on, this big book.
Yeah, well, you could limit the amount of grants that you're willing to hear the first round. You could, we could say, sure.
$2,500,000 bare minimum. You're gonna need 4 months to find that out. When you're gonna get that.
Yeah.
Something all items.
Which some of this criteria wouldn't even, like Dr. Kelly said, some of the criteria wouldn't have to kick in until it's over a certain dollar amount. So my idea was kind of 25,000, anything above 25,000, maybe have some extra safeguards kick in. Under that, then, not require like the letter of credit and all of those other things. Yes.
If you have letter of credit, that's going on, you have the money, you're just coming to be like, document. So he has also. That seems not very coming.
Right. That's what I had said. It was a letter of credit and things like that. But, people can have a grand plan, but, so we just want to make sure that we get the most bang for our buck, which is, I think, what everybody wants. Everybody wants the biggest impact and the thing that's going to last the longest. We don't want something that's good for just a bit and then we go back to what we were. We want something that's going to last and continue a forward momentum.
Problem because I think 50,000 above. So it sounds like they're not comfortable with 25,000. Is that accurate?
I think it would depend on what they're asking for it for.
Like it's the higher level that you guys are uncomfortable with? Is that where we're at?
No, it's the safety measures that we've
Yeah.
been discussing this whole meeting. It's all about the safety measures.
I don't think it's necessarily an amount. I think
And safety measures and proven result is the idea. The dollar amount?
If it's not level 25 of the law. With
Yeah.
process in place, if you know the trade.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, whoever was sitting here before the current group is sort of irrelevant because they're no longer here. But the idea is that we've been told by one attorney, preached for, a couple decades now, that interior was nope, cannot do it.
Yeah.
So this is very new.
Yeah.
Certainly for me, and I've been here long time. I don't know. I don't think anybody has ever been not okay with a very large project, so long as the right safety measures are there. And like it sounds, I mean, a lot of the things that's been discussed here tonight are a great step in the right direction of guaranteeing that everything happens the way that the board is trying to see it happen. So.
Right. It's just my biggest thing is that it's done right. I don't want to do something that's willy-nilly because I have heard, from the attorney multiple times, and I've read the statute myself multiple times. I want to make sure that we have the specifications, which I'm, incredibly glad that we have the CRA attorney because I feel like this is their specialty. They will go through and say, okay, yes, this is, a possible issue going forward. This may be a future lawsuit. This may be, they can tell us all of those things. But when we're thinking about expanding a grant program so big, which, I know 350,000 is not that big. However, this is talking about for years, going forward and things like that. It's important that it's all done right. So there's been several meetings over the last 3.5 years that I've sat on the council where it felt like we had to kind of go back and tweak different things because something would come before us and we're like, oh wait, it doesn't say that. Is that okay? Is that not okay? And so I want it as black and white as possible, because the only, one of the only things that kind of scares me about this process is I don't want it to be a popularity contest. I want it to be a project that is going to be beneficial to everyone in Avon Park. So when we talk about even, which I've got questions about the scoring thing and stuff like that, we'll get to later. But when it comes to questions about what's the value to the community? Well, how are we going to measure that? What you think is valuable to the community, I may not think is valuable to the community, and vice versa. And that becomes a matter of opinion. When opinions get involved, feelings get hurt, projects get messed up, things happen, and it's not fun. And so over the last 3.5 years, even with some of the other things that we've done, we've tried to make everything as black and white as possible. Okay, if person A meets all of the criteria, they're just as equal as person B as long as they both meet the criteria. I want as least amount as possible to be left up to an individual's opinion as possible.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
So Brittany, when you say you don't want it to become a popularity contest, you mean between the businesses?
No, I would love for them to compete for it, because that means they're all vying to invest their personal dollars into the projects. I'm talking about amongst the people who are scoring these applications, and then individuals making the decisions and things like that. I want the scoring criteria to be which my question about that is because you've mentioned before, like if they say they ask for 100 and we can tweak that number and things like that. So how is the scoring? Is it just going to be the top? It can't just be the top 5 numbers, because that may not work out financially. If the top 5 projects spend all the money and, or the money spent in 3 projects or whatever, we may have to pick and choose. Okay, we can afford this big one, and then now we got to pick 6 of the little ones, but the little ones are not ever going to score as high as the big ones. So how is that going to work out?
Now that's one of my concerns too, is that if you got 20 people that, file for the entry into this, and then we choose, let's say 10, then how's that going to affect the other 10 that didn't get it? We have to make sure that our scoring process has limitations and risk rewards, so that we can say these businesses deserved it because of A, B, and C. And that way it isn't like, because, well, we know somebody owned a business and they want to open another business, so we like them, and so let's give them a shot. The scoring process has to be exactly right. It has to be, they have to meet certain criteria, so we can absolutely say that, we picked it for the qualifications, not for anything else. And we have to protect ourselves, especially because if we're the ones up here picking the ones.
Right.
Yep.
So then if you have a problem with it being a popularity contest, then make all the names on it confidential.
Can I just point out that if you look at the 8 scoring criteria, really only one of them could potentially be considered a subjective score, and that would be public benefit and blight reduction. I mean, if you look at strict numbers of job creation and economic impact, the property type, the
But
tax
even
base.
with that top one, though, the job creation and economic impact, what determines if it's significant? What are those
that's
numbers?
quantifiable. I mean,
So
you set the threshold. If you want 10 jobs or you want $1 million economic impact to the region.
right.
I
So
mean,
all of those things are going to have to be spelled out in here, though. Exactly what means significant, what's moderate, what's minimal.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand that, but I'm saying that these are not subjective criteria, except for potentially public benefit.
And with that, let's just use 2 examples. Okay. Let's go back to the Fern building. Let's say she applies. I don't know if I have talked to her. I know she's interested. We have $2,000 a storefront to offer. That's not enough for her to get started. let's just say she's interested in applying. And she's going to be able to put 4 businesses down there versus a commercial insurance company that wants to paint their building just because they wanted a different color. That's minimal versus significant. That's where this is coming into play.
Right. I know there's general guidelines that it's just common sense. I completely understand that. But I feel like we need to make it as quantifiable as possible, some kind of measurement. But then again, it still goes into my, if we only have enough money to do one big project, and then all these little ones score little bits of dollars are not going to score as high. So do we still have the ability to go in and get those smaller ones and fill in the funding gap, or do we save the rest of that money until the next year and do just another big project? How does all that work? What are your thoughts on that?
I have
My-
thought,
Go-
sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I have a thought on that, and I don't know if this would work, and shoot me down if it doesn't. You would break each project down into, help me out here, somebody. You'd have 10 big projects in this bracket, 10 big ones. And we know that we're gonna pick out 2 brackets. The other smaller ones, we would put into a smaller bracket, and out of those, we may pick 4. And then next year, same thing, we pick out of that bracket and we pick the smaller ones out of the second bracket. So then it's fair for all the ones that are in the smaller bracket, and it's fair for the ones that are in the bigger bracket.
So you want to kind of split the pots of money and
We would
say,
take the criteria of the people.
You're effectively talking about different tranches of money. So if you have $100,000 tranche and then you have like a $25,000 to $50,000 and then, 0 to 25.
And
So
the bigger
you would
one,
have different,
Yeah.
right, you'd pick the bigger project. Out of the medium, we'd pick the medium, and out of the smaller ones, you'd pick the smaller. But then you'd have to differentiate how many are you going to pick out of the smaller bracket, the middle, and the larger bracket. Because then everybody would be, all the larger ones would be in the bracket together. It would be fair for them because they're all similar. Same thing with the other brackets.
I think very out 2 months. Part of advisory board, the report, this is the best way to spend that money, most impact the city. And that's why we're all here. Our perfect time. They're like putting on index. But hands down, that's city time, thing, time that you have.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty clear to me that really what we're talking about is a handful of larger buildings downtown that are going to make all the difference one way or another, right? A lot of the smaller ones, yes, they're great, but it's not going to have nearly as big of an impact as the handful of larger ones. So if I understand correctly, we're going to have this open for a period of time and then consider all of them at the end of that time. Is that right? Okay. So you could simply have different rounds. We can pretty much all agree that we would rather see one large project over 10 small projects. So you could have the first round of, in the larger category, we're going to consider the larger ones first at above a certain dollar figure. And after we go through there, we're going to limit it to say 2 for this first go around, this first year or whatever.
Yep.
And then after if we do get 2, we may get 0. But if we do get 2, we go ahead and fund them. There may not be any money left over for the smaller ones. We go to the next year. Or if we don't get any larger ones, then it's all available for the smaller ones for that year. That type of thing.
So
Either
then
way,
we have to wait for all our businesses to on down the road.
So if you want
Well, in
to,
2 years, the smaller businesses, they still may be hurting, and they still may not get funding.
there's always going to be hurting business. I guarantee
Well,
it.
of course, and that big business could hurt too.
I'm
Whereas
with,
if you have the 10 smaller ones that may flourish and do way better than the bigger business.
I'm with Shelley. I get it. The bigger the business, the more business is gonna bring downtown, more employees is gonna employ. I get that part. But I think it would be unfair to the small businesses who depend on this income as their their living income, that they have to wait for 2 years because we decided to put all the money in the big business. I thought that was a great idea that Shelley did. Let's spread it around. And that means instead of we just getting these two large businesses, we may be able to fund 4 to 6 small ones. Now we got 6 and 7 new business on Main Street instead of just the 2. Mhm. The traffic. Mhm. I get that part too. My main concern is the complaint and concern that the small business is gonna bring to the city. How well are they gonna sit with that?
You know, part of it too is that how many buyers can afford to buy and fix a multi-million-dollar building versus how many buyers can afford to do a $50,000 or $100,000 building. Well, obviously the number for the small buildings is exponentially higher. There's probably 10 to 100 to 1 maybe. So definitely we should fix the hardest problems first while the CRA still exists, because they may not exist tomorrow. So I say tackle the biggest problems right now and make that the priority, and hopefully we actually get somewhere with it.
My biggest priority with doing the scoring rubric was that we're really focused on reducing slum and blight with the projects that are going to make the biggest impact. You're going to decide what that means. That might be a small business. It doesn't necessarily mean the big buildings will necessarily score higher. They may not. You'll hear from each applicant if you want to. I don't know how many we're going to get. We have no idea how this is going to go. So I don't want to get so far in the weeds or put ourselves in such a stronghold that we can mold this as we go. And let's just see who has the money to invest, who has the match money, what that business looks like. Again, I don't know that the big buildings will even apply. I have no idea. My whole point with this is just let's give them an opportunity to apply. Let's give them something other than $2,000 per storefront. And they have a really great idea. So there might be buildings that pop up between now and January that we don't know about. And then somebody wants to come in and they have this great idea for a business there. Well, let's give them the opportunity to apply for this. You guys score it and we'll see how that scoring lands. And just like our RFPs, just because someone scores the highest does not necessarily mean that needs to be where the money allocation goes. And then during that meeting, once we know which projects were scored the highest, then we can have that conversation and then you can reroute this money the way that you see feasible. We're not stuck to these guidelines. We can shape it as we go so that it works in a way that makes everybody happy.
It's going to attract other investors in the city too. It's being unlimited. We have no idea what we could be creating. So that's the point. If we get that one, people win, and people start to see the development in the city, then we all know it. And we discuss it on one of our advisory. And we don't know. It could be completely unlimited as to where we could go.
My biggest feedback I'm getting right now, the excitement in downtown Avon Park, is what's going on at the Brickell. That's what everybody's talking about right now. Everybody's excited about the new restaurants. They're excited about the poorhouse. They're excited about Sophie's coming. I mean, that's exciting to them. That's getting people like, okay, maybe I want to be. I had a girl from Sebring reach out to me. Do you know of any storefronts in downtown Avon Park? She doesn't need CRA money, but that motivation or the momentum is like getting people interested. We do that to another building. They're like, something's going on in Avon Park. That is not happening with painting houses. I will tell you that right now. So I think we definitely have the ability to mold and shape this however you want, but we just need to put something out there so we don't know what we'll get, but I think it's going to be good. I think it might be something and it might just surprise everybody here, but I don't want them to look at this and be like, no way. I'm not applying for that. It's too much. So if it is too much, let me know. But let's just kind of jump back in. I don't want to keep you guys here all night. My goal was to—
Got one question over there. Rick.
Go ahead.
Rick.
talking about giving money to somebody to open business in Avon Park. I'm in on that. No, if we can do it once, then we can figure out a way to make it where they have to show that they're gonna stay here or whatever. Just having somebody that's got a building willing to do something in Avon Park, like the Brickell building, it's gonna change our city. This is a great problem we're trying to do. So,
Yeah.
you know, any way that we can make it work, I'm in. I'm all in for that because this is my city. It's
Agreed.
your city.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm all in too. And let's face it, this is going to be a work in progress. It's going to be a test case this first year. And we might have to adjust as we go along and see what happens. And, you know, I think whatever we do, we have to do something. We're ready for a change to make downtown and the city of Avon Park different so that people want to come and open a business, or they want to come and live here. They want to find a job here. So I think that this is kind of going to be like a test year for us. And we might have to, in our scoring process, kind of figure those things out on our own. What's going to give us the best bang for the buck as well as risk and reward. So we have to be somewhat flexible, but I understand that we also have to be protecting ourselves and making a decision. So it's going to be difficult no matter which way you do it. But we have to give it a shot and try it and, and just move forward. We have to try something.
So we'll just stay in, because I heard that was one of the questions I had, was that the scoring, was that going to determine, is it top score gets it? But you said that's not going. The scoring is just kind of like just letting us know where everybody else's head is at, but we're not necessarily required to award the top scores.
Right. Yes. I like
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because I don't know how this is going to unfold.
Yeah.
And so there might be three top projects that are the three biggest buildings. And you guys say, well, I really like this residential homeowner. She's been here for 30 years and she has a need and we want to fill that. And that's $5,000. So you can decide that but I don't know who's going to apply. I know a bunch of homeowners will apply, but we need to leave the availability there to break that down and we can decide how we want to.
So we just need the attorney to help us with that verbiage so that somebody can't, like with the pickleball courts, come back and say, no, you said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some kind of disclaimer that it's a trial process and we have the right to change the application at any time, even after that January 31st deadline. We have the right to, change the specifications as needed or to award projects as, some kind of language in there that frees us up.
And I think I have something in there, but I'll find it.
And you're right. And at the same time, the scoring process, as it was brought to us, it's open for discussion too. So, it's a possibility that, your scoring may change in the discussion of everybody that's up here or everybody.
We may get some opinions from the audience that were like, oh, we didn't think about that. Yeah.
Exactly. That's why I think we have some flexibility, but at the same time, we have to protect ourselves. So, it's a trial basis. Let's go forward and let's do the best we can. Let's continue to work on it, but let's get it started. That's one thing we've always done. We had all these ideas and we never got them started. And once you got them started, we never finished them. We need to move forward and get something done and get it going. So, Jessica's doing the best she can and trying to do something new that's different, and everything that's new and different. Most people don't ever want to change anything in their lives. They don't want to move someplace. They don't want to change their jobs. I mean, change is difficult for most people to accept, but we have to change something to make Avon Park different, better than what it is, because it's been stagnant for a long time. And so we're going to have to take some risk. That's all there is to it. When we get elected up here to vote, we're going to make some people happy and some people are not going to be happy. But we got to do something. We can't just sit here and worry about stuff like that all the time. We have to make a decision and move forward, and then just hope and pray that we made the right decision, and the mistakes we made, we can adjust the following year. That's how I look at it.
We're definitely going to make mistakes. I know that. But I'm hoping we'll learn each time. I want to go through the tiered reimbursements. We didn't have a chance to talk about it at our CRA board meeting, but we did discuss it at our advisory meeting about caps. And I'm trying to make this as simple as possible, but 10 pages in, it doesn't seem that simple. So advisory's recommendation was, why have a cap at all? That really prohibits us from helping and in partnering with these larger investments. So what I came up with was a tiered reimbursement. So say it's $1 million improvement. Up to $100,000 is a $50,000 match, or a 50% match, 50,000 total. If you were doing improvements over that, let's say up to 300,000, it's a 25% reimbursement for a total of, you could get up to $100,000 grant. If you were going up to $1 million improvement on a property, then you're eligible for 10% reimbursement for up to $170,000 grant funds. Obviously, that is not going to be done in a year. So that would probably be a multi-year. You would already designate this is going to be a 3-year program or whatever that looks like. Winter Haven does this. That's where I've got this tiered reimbursement from. And then ADA was a little different. I put 100% of reimbursement up to 25,000 versus a match on that. So I'd like to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I like the tiered system. If anything, I would say start lower with the percentage.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
If we're talking about getting the most bang for your buck, then obviously the smaller match that we're having to put in versus how much they're putting in, the better. And we do want to make sure that whoever we're helping could otherwise more than likely complete the project without that help. So that way we're not creating an unsustainable situation.
So I'm sorry, what change would you like to make?
I'm opening up for discussion basically, but just, I'm talking about potentially changing the 50 and the 25% to maybe something lower, starting with 30, going to 15, then 10 or something like that. But by all means, I'm open to hear what everybody has to say.
I'm kind of curious what the advisory members think about this one. Not all at once.
We paid ourselves in that box. So if we got more opportunities we can offer, we got the ability to make it. If you want to say, well, I don't feel comfortable 25%, I do it then, you can still do that.
Okay.
You're gonna pay $1. You may not list. And you will wait, so wait. Somebody else project beyond the timeline we had to fit, so we got to be careful with the amount.
Well, 170,000 is the cap.
No,
That would be
correct. If somebody wanted to do $1 million improvement under this, they could get up to $170,000.
exactly that number. 170.
I don't know of too many projects that would go beyond that, but I mean, I wish somebody came to us. I don't know that it's even possible to do, but I wish somebody came to us with a $5 million project, but I just don't think one exists in downtown Avon Park. So,
I mean, but wouldn't that be like a really good incentive program if we did have it at the 50%?
in the beginning, you mean?
Yeah.
You mean as it's read here?
Yeah.
That's a big investment though.
Yeah.
Definitely. Just
Rick.
nobody can go about
Well, all of these are going to be existing buildings.
Yeah.
This is not for new construction.
I agree with that. At least at the
But it's
beginning.
only up to 170, you said, right?
Correct. As it's written here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the max is 170. And again, I want you to think most CRAs are doing property acquisition. So they're spending $300 to $1 million on properties and giving them away to get that type of investment. So 170, while is not a small number, it's not a big number when you're talking about looking for a multi-million-dollar
Right.
improvement to a building. So
maximum.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea.
Because if they only did 300,000 and we gave them 170, then we've gone over that 50%.
Right.
So
They couldn't
But,
get,
but
they,
doesn't the original only say a maximum of 50% match?
yeah, so it's tiered now. So under this tiered system, the max they could get is 170,000.
I think the words you're looking for are up to, maximum up to.
That's what we meant.
Up to 50%? That's what you're saying, up to the 50%.
So then would the second one be up to an additional 25? and
Correct.
Up to an additional 10?
Correct.
Very good. Good job.
any other discussion on the percentages, allocations?
I just wanted to clarify, this is only for existing buildings, correct? This is not for new construction.
Correct.
I have one question, as far as the grants, basically, are we going to distinguish between a building owner or a shop owner that owns a business within the building?
Has to be property owner.
Has to be the property.
Not according to this application, but we need to talk about that, especially if you're talking, I mean, if it's a facade grant and you're talking about only 5, I can see where that would be okay to be a tenant because it's just a paint job. But if we're talking about doing major renovations in a building that needs to be in the owner's name, I know you have in here, they have to have owner permission, but I think all contracts and everything like that should be in the owner's name, especially if we're thinking of putting a lien on it, a lien clause.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was thinking too.
Anything else on the financing part?
My only thing, and I don't know if this could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, is limiting, them from receiving more than one award.
More than one award?
As it's set up, it allows them to do it every 5 years, which, if we have a really invested person that's coming in and they're just fixing everything up, I don't want to hamper that. But then I also want to be fair.
Would it be
You
5
know.
years from the completion of the project?
It just says in any 5-year period right now.
Can anybody clarify if it's 5 years from the completion of the project?
No property may exceed the maximum grant award of 170,000 in a 5-year period from, yes, project completion would probably make the most sense.
If it
We-
takes them 2 years to complete that, now you're talking about 7 years. I mean, I think that's fair.
I mean, we could
Okay.
say over a lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, somebody that's done it once is going to be a lot more fit to do it again. So in a way, you kind of want that person that's already done it to come back. You want that serial investor that's able to complete it,
And it's per property address, not person.
And
So if a property were to receive, let's say, $100,000, but they don't have the money, the other 50% or whatever the math comes out to be to do a match for the remaining, but 5 years later, they have a little bit of money, they want to do a little bit more work, they still haven't hit that max allotment.
Well, that changes everything.
Yeah, I don't
I
think
misunderstood
that.
that. No, if it's per property, then that's lifetime. That property gets one grant, that's done.
yeah.
For that
And my-
max total.
No, just
That-
gets an award one time. I don't
Right.
think they should be coming back every year and scraping off an additional 50 and beating somebody else out of it. If it's still going to the same property. And then on the next one, this storefront business, I feel like it needs to be a building is a building on the property. If they're getting $170,000, it does not take into account, because this says can be a maximum award unless each storefront has its own official mailing address. Well, a lot of them do. Separate property tax records, some can, and independent entrance visible from the public realm. There's no way I would award $170,000 multiple times to a building that fits those 3 criteria. I don't feel like that's fair at all.
No, I agree.
100%.
And my thinking with that was, again, some of these, I don't know of any buildings on Main Street that have storefronts with different mailing addresses. So do y'all know of
All-
a property
all-
where that would be for an individual mailing address or a suite address? That's not
Individual mailing. Yeah.
They don't each have their own separate property.
Come on now. Go to the post office.
Yeah.
They'll tell you.
It's one property tax record. So most of them
No, I understand, but they legitimately do have different mailing addresses. So a lot of those buildings you'll see, they might have 15 mailboxes in one place on the building or somewhere, but they are legitimately different mailing addresses.
Yeah, if they're getting up to $170,000, at the end of the day, we still want their investment in it. We're not supposed to be funding the entire project.
And it's not necessarily tied to a delivery address anyway. You know, in the case of, let's take the Guelph building. I mean, that building's large enough that you could have several different addresses inside that building. It's going to have to be tied in a different way that it's that building, period. It can't be broken up into 4 different buildings within that one frame there. So I don't know how we would legally do that, but I'm sure the attorney could figure that out.
Hey, I have a question. So let's say the building owner got the $170,000 max grant and they did a lot of the improvements for code compliance. And now there's businesses going into these actual storefronts that need additional assistance. Is there some lower dollar amount you would consider at that point per storefront, or it's just the building?
No,
owner?
because we're not there to help the occupants per se. It's the building itself that you're after. That is the only thing that you can mortgage. That's the only thing that you could actually have any reoccurrence over. You're not going to be able to go back and say anything to a person that's simply
then that-
renting
I mean,
a building. Part of the
That's,
building.
in my experience, that's not economic development then.
But economic development, it may not be CRA. That may be another program that we need to talk about as far as incentives for actual businesses that are coming in. But as far as fixing the slum and blight, that needs to be the building, the actual building, not new businesses coming in. Because when that building owner, when they rent out those businesses, they're bringing in income. They can use that income to then
So-
make additional changes if they want to.
So you're gonna have.
That's great, but then I'm going looking at this scoring matrix for job creation and economic impact.
So if they rehab their building and they create 4 storefronts that are now ready to have people come in there, and each storefront's able to have 2 employees and bring in, I don't know what a good number for economic impact as far as customers coming in, that has nothing to do with us giving additional money to a business going in that storefront.
Yeah, I don't- I
Okay, let me give an
disagree with that.
example. So
I
right,
disagree
I
too.
disagree with that. If you have if you have a business owner, they put $500,000 in that building and they release people, okay, go ahead, you're on your own. But now these people can't afford to, without a little bit of help,
No, that's
start
not-
their business.
That's not what we're talking about, though. We're talking about if you have a big building, right?
Right?
And they're wanting to rehab it, and we give that big building $170,000.
Yeah.
And then they have 4 doors on that
Right.
building that we already gave $170,000
Right.
for. And then they're wanting to put a business in each one of those storefronts. Then each one of those storefronts would have an opportunity to get an additional grant.
Okay, but not as a tenant. You're saying the building owner can't get additional funds. You weren't talking about a tenant, right?
The tenant can't apply for anything. The building owner has to apply for everything unless he's been designated by the building owner,
So
but
we've
it would still be in his name.
We've never had tenants be able to get CRA funds to improve the
And
building.
it is common for tenants to apply. That's why on the last page of the application or this handbook, there is where there's a property owner authorizing for these smaller amounts.
Sure, but they always have to have the will of the owner of the property, no matter what the situation. So if that's the case, which it has to be, then that property owner's name would now be on the application. It may have the tenant's name as well, but it's still going to be tied to the actual building owner.
Right.
And if that building owner has already got a grant for that address or that building, it's not going to happen.
Okay, well, if the building owner comes and he gets X amount of dollars and he tells his tenants,
He won't have any tenants.
sorry, you won't, he won't have any.
And as a
tenants."
requirement, he has to have tenants for him to get the grant.
Let's choose a new business coming to town. So the new diner, Charlie Faye's Diner, right? She called me, asked me what we could do. They don't need a facade grant. That Locan group's already been approved for awnings. So technically, they've already received 1 grant. So we're saying, sorry, Charlie, they've got an awning grant. We are not going to be able to help you.
Well, we're instituting new rules now But yes, under the new rules, that's exactly what it would be.
I wouldn't let them, I wouldn't say keep coming back and dipping into it every year though, and just getting little, I think that kind of defeats the purpose of making a big impact. If a company's just going to, or a business is going to come back and just ask for little bits at a time, we want, and they couldn't even, if it's some of the buildings that we're talking about, asking for little bits at a time is not going to make an economic impact, anyway.
It also defeats the tiered system.
But
Right.
I'm thinking of those that don't have the 50% to match. So some of them have to save money to do the improvements. And so they can't do all the improvements at one time. So they might need a little bit now to help out, and then they can save up some money and then do a little bit later.
But if they don't have the money to do the improvements, they can't get a CO to open, which means they can't have tenants, which means we can't give them any money to start with. They have to have the money to get the building up to code so that they can open it. So we can't just give them little bits. That's more of the beautification kind of thing, which if you want to make a beautification grant, a separate one, and say that can be reapplied up to a certain amount, that would be something that may be able to be continually done. But as far as these renovations, the renovations can't be done in little bits or the building can't open regardless.
So we're saying if we give a building $20,000, you get one grant, no more. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Regardless of what tenants come in there, and they might need some electrical, the electrical in the building is not brought up to code.
For 5 years, yeah.
So lifetime or 5 years?
Yeah, because you just said lifetime.
Yeah, I don't think that we should do it for tenants.
I don't think we would have no, because most contracts, most tenant agreements have a clause in there where they can't even enter into any financial, obligation with somebody. So if we're loaning them money and we're saying, sign this contract, now you're under a financial obligation. Well, they're like, sorry, our lease says we can't do that. So that means that contract was null and void from the beginning. I mean, these contracts need to be with the business owners. You're talking about doing big projects. We're not talking about those facade grants anymore. When we were doing the facade grants, the painting, that was one thing. This is a completely different ball game.
I don't know. I just think if you do that, you're going to start limiting the amount of tenants that's coming into a building.
Yeah.
Or
It
should
won't
go back-
limit tenants if they're able to open their building. Right now, the buildings are not being open, and that's what we're trying to address, right? Do you want the buildings open? Well, they can't get their reimbursement until the building is actually open. Once the building is open, they can have tenants.
For the building owner, yes. Yes, for the building owner.
Well, the building,
But the CRA is not meant to give financial, like a leg up for a business to come in to start their actual business. That
Okay,
needs
but
to
I'm
be.
saying I disagree with you. That's all. So we can move on. I don't need that.
Yeah, go. Well, I was trying to
well,
explain
the
what I was-
building owner is not going to upgrade his building to put in tenants if he doesn't have tenants that can come in and move in and open up a business. So it's up to the building owner to find the right tenant that can come in and spend the money to open up the business.
Right.
So I know where you're coming from. We'd like to be able to help everybody out to start a business, even a small business that's renting out a space, but that's getting too difficult and too spread out. It's kind of like if we're going to give the money to the owner of the building, then it's up to him to find the tenants that can afford to open up a small business and the amount of rental units he has available.
Right.
Name and address for the record.
Emilio Garibaldi, 126 West Main Street.
Yes, sir.
To Jessica's point and to what you said about the addresses, the buildings, the large ones, each unit can get its own CO. So you can work from there. It doesn't have to be the entire building, because a lot of the buildings do have 6 addresses, 5 addresses, whatever the case may be. But each unit can get its own CO. The Brickell building did. The Brickell building got a CO just for the gym. So why would that not be able to, why wouldn't they not be able to do that? Because you're saying if the CO, if they need to open or whatever the case may be, that section of the building may be done and they need $10,000, $15,000, and they're working on the rest of the building as time goes on. Why would you limit them to one shot and that's it? That wouldn't make sense when you can get COs on individual parts of the building.
one single property. Even though you can get, which is the CO. you
Yeah,
can
if-
get
hey,
one.
Yes.
if you're gonna, hey, if you're gonna,
Would be-
you have to get it.
Grant would be on building. I mean, only on, you only have one grant, even though it's all planned throughout the.
Right. That's the point I'm trying to get across here.
That's what I was trying to say as well.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Grant. And you have. Matt. Matt. Everything works. And the property owner wants to allow another tenant to explore another part of the building. Don't we grade it? Don't we score it? That somebody came in and did exactly what they said they were gonna do and it happened? Magic happened? Wouldn't that be a part of the scoring process that we would consider a second applicant in that same building by the property owner, even though it's a tenant? Well, we have the ability to score and say, I'm glad you brought the application within your 5-year period, but it didn't work out with this property owner last time. We have to score it. We are coached to score it.
I could see certainly, I could definitely see an avenue to do that if it was capped at the final amount and it still was accumulative to where it carried with the same tier system. So in other words, if they did 25 in this one, 25 in the next one, now it jumps to the next tier for the whatever units. I mean, I could certainly see a way that you could do that and you could make it fair, but it would have to be explained and it would have to be laid out in the beginning that this is the intention kind of thing.
Young lady is bringing us opportunities with the glass half full.
Sure.
It did work out. Before.
Sure.
Another application 5 years ago. Didn't do it for it.
Right.
This is looking at possibilities of without any of this class. We always have the opportunity to do it too. You're allowed to apply, we're allowed not to apply.
That's a good point,
We're
Mr.
gonna
Derek.
score everything every year.
I like that.
When they come whining, we'll see your resolve, sir. Okay.
That's a perfect analogy to this. And so the reason the
Yes.
way I have it written on here is 170,000 max per property. So not limiting per lifetime is what it probably should say. But just saying, if that happened, you got $5,000, 100%. Okay, anything over that would be 50%. It's still under that same property. She's a tenant, so she would have to get owner authorization. But just saying, it's going to come before us. If it meets the eligibility requirements and state statute and it's in our redevelopment plan and we can do it legally, then it scores well, the boards like it, then why not do another? Why are we sticking to every 5 years if it's you? My whole thing is why not? But I'm just throwing it at you for you to make the decision.
Jessica, I like the part 170,000 a lifetime, no matter how many tenants you have. Other words, whether it's the owner that wants to do the fire system or plumbing or whatever, or whether it's 3, 4, 5 tenants inside his building. I like to park $170,000 per that building, and it don't have to be the owner. It could be the owner and the tenants, as long as they don't go over the, as long as the combine them together don't go over the 170,000.
And
Yeah.
let's be honest, most people do not have more than 100. The small businesses do not have. They're going to be more frugal with this because they're having to match the funds.
Right.
So most people, you only get 50% up to $100,000. So $50,000 or $50,000 at the 50%. Most people are not going to go anywhere near that, but they may not have the money to match. And most people don't know what improvements need to happen all at one time. They might need to phase things. So that's why this was written this way.
Kind of building in the city anyway, so it's not an infinite number. So you're not really engaging in economic development, and wouldn't that be really, business problem?
We only have so many properties, to your point, and most people have already gotten a grant. So we're saying, no, you can't do it. Who's next?
Kind of step on the neck of the growth.
But there's a lot of new businesses that need things that would qualify in some of these grant criteria. And we're saying, no, you can't apply because your landlord put awnings up one time.
Well, then it may need to be a dollar amount as far as, I want there to be enough, and I know some people think this wouldn't happen, but I want there to be enough guidelines or whatever to where everybody gets to come and have kind of a slice of the pie, if that's what you're talking about. Because if you're talking about just these little bits, which I thought we were talking about, let's do a big project. A big project versus some people coming in and just taking little bits of money is going to be two completely different things. But if this business has a plan and they've already got it set up into 5 phases, and every year they're going to come and ask for a certain amount of money, because they already have these 5 phases set up, then that might discourage the other businesses from coming forward because we're already kind of invested in this 5-phase project. So it's almost like we're committing to giving it to them. I know we would be rescoring again, but it's still almost like we're committing to that.
And that's where I want the flexibility to be, where it might be a multi-year project. These big projects, I mean, how long did it take the Brickell to be what it is today? Several years. So these bigger projects, the 170 will need to be stretched out over multiple years. And so that could be determined that will be a 3-year project. So you don't need to rescore it. It's already been approved. And as long as they're meeting their guidelines or criteria, then there's no point in them having to come back time after time. That's if they have the upfront money when they do the proof of funds or the pro forma to show, yeah, I can pay for it. Most people in Avon Park don't have $1 million to put into a building. So I don't know that we're going to run into this very often.
Yeah.
But I don't think we should close the door on these small businesses that don't have a lot of cash flow, and they're that
I 100% think the small businesses should have an opportunity. But my thing is, if you start giving it to tenants, okay, some businesses have tenants that come in and out on a regular basis. So you may have the same exact location and they get a new tenant every year, and so you want to allow that new tenant every single year to come forward and ask for a grant for that same particular piece of property. That's what we need to limit.
I think we've already established that they will not be given to tenants. A tenant can apply, but it's still tied to the owner.
So the owner, okay, so then I guess it goes back into that, how many, is it still, it's one building? How are we going to differentiate that?
Well, it's $1 amount per building, period. You can come on up.
We have a tenant here who has applied.
Just name and address.
And 200 West Main Street.
Yes, sir.
So obviously I came in, you guys all saw me, I applied, for $5,000.
Yes, sir.
With that being said, you guys denied it because it was a $2,000 thing. So I kind of just listening to what you guys said was like a total of $170,000 for a building. And you don't want to give it to like a tenant. But what if your landlord doesn't want to do anything to your building? And what if the other tenants at your building could care less? But me as a business owner who's trying to build a brand, build something to look at and, be welcoming, how can you, if you can't give that to a tenant, how is anything
going to improve?
Yeah, how's anything going to improve? Because a lot of tenants, even let's say landlords, just for houses, They don't want to put any money into anything. They don't want to take the time to fill out the application. My landlord, he signed off the application, but I'm pretty sure I filled out the tax form for myself and my business, not his tax form.
Right.
So wouldn't that be on me, not?
Well, the main issue here is in the recourse because there's no way to go after a tenant if you don't do what you said you're going to do. You can go
When you
after.
say, what do you mean when you say you're?
So there's obviously financial obligations that if you don't spend the money the way that you're supposed to, or you don't follow all the criteria, there's recourses for that.
Right.
We
but don't-
can't-
you
we
don't
can't
get
enforce-
paid. You don't get paid. The contract doesn't get paid until all that criteria is met, like him coming and checking and
Right.
those things, correct?
Correct.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is that if you don't own the property, there's nothing that the city can do to that person. They can leave tomorrow. They're gone.
Right.
That's it.
But the purpose was to bring the building up, right? To bring Main Street up? Is that not my idea
Right.
here when I came in, I didn't obviously know anything about a grant or anything like that. And I started all this cash money, everything that, that I hadn't put into it.
Mhm.
Obviously a little bit of help for the face front, you know what I mean? I don't own the building. I am willing, you know what I mean, to put some money into the building, even though I don't own it because it is my business.
Right.
But how do you,
But no matter what, the owner is still going to have to sign off on it.
and he did sign off on it.
And that's all we're asking you to do. The owner is going to have to sign off on it. That's it.
But the application was in his name, not the owner's name.
It still has the owner's consent
It
there.
has his consent.
All the
that I
financial
can make-
obligation
that I
is
can
on the
make-
owner,
that I
not
can
him.
make changes, but I filed out the tax form for myself. I didn't give that to the owner. So I just don't, that doesn't make sense to me. He said it's the owner's obligation, but all he did was sign a piece of paper okaying something to be changed under his building, but you're giving me the money as the business owner, correct? Like, right or wrong?
I mean, I don't see a problem with the tenant actually doing all the legwork of getting the things done, but the owner of the property has to consent to it.
And I understand that, and
Right.
the owner did consent to that.
Right. And if there's some sort of a tax deed situation where we have a lien on the deed of the property, that's going to be on the owner's obligation. That's got
So
nothing to do with you.
why wouldn't the owner fill out the tax form instead of me?
I have no idea why your owner didn't fill out the tax form.
Because
I'm
it
just
was-
simply telling you how
Can I
this
make a
situation
comment,
works.
Please. So I think it's going to be dependent on dollar amounts. So we're not going to have recourse against an owner for, say, a $7,000 grant. We're only looking at doing tax liens, or I'm sorry, liens on the property if it's over a certain threshold. But if there's, money to help out a smaller business like this tied to a tenant, that's not going to require a lien on the building.
Right.
I don't know why we wouldn't do that.
Nobody's saying we're not doing it. We're all saying the exact same thing. The owner gave him permission to do what he was doing. That's all we asked for.
But I'm going back to the dollar amounts.
Curiosity.
Why didn't you get yours approved?
Yeah,
You could have got it approved for $2,000. The limit on the time, that application was limited at $2,000. So we told you, look, you can apply for it right now and you can
Right,
get
right.
$2,000, or you can wait until we finish this process and potentially get $5,000. That's what your situation was.
But his property is a great example. So there's 3 other buildings on that one parcel, correct? That's why the 2,000 came into play.
Correct.
So in this instance, if we said it's per property, one-time application, if he were to, the building owner doesn't care, right? He's getting rent. That's all he really cares about. He's got a land or a leasing in there. If he were to get the grant, none of the other ones, let's say somebody else, they changed businesses and that person wanted to get some type of grant and they had the matching funds to do so, to do some type of slum and blight reduction. Well, he's already got the grant and it's only one time per property. So we can't help you. That's where the max came into play because businesses are going to come and go. That's the nature of every small downtown, but we shouldn't, the building owners, as we look around, are not the ones concerned about improving their buildings. It's the people that are investing their time, money, and energy into a small business on downtown.
So then the only thing an issue that I see with that is it's only matching after 5,000. So if you've got a building that's got multiple storefronts and they're only wanting to do $5,000, but they've got 8 different storefronts, then they automatically get $40,000 without matching anything. if a building has, because you only have to match after 5,000,
Mm-hmm.
right? So anything over 5,000 has to be matched. But if each storefront only spends 5,000 and they've got 8 of them, then they just got 40,000 for that building without ever matching any funds if you're going tenant per tenant.
Yeah,
Isn't it for the tenant though?
Make it a what?
Make that a one, and all storefront would fall under the guideline of matching after the 5,000 if they want to do more. If they want to do more storefronts or more work, and if it's gonna run more than 5,000, then they would fall under the, the matching instead of getting another 5,000 for each front. It would be a percentage based on the grant.
So if they got their free 5,000 the first year, the second year, if they come back and ask for more, it's automatically matching it because they've already gotten their 5,000. Is that what you're saying?
Like you pointed out earlier, just that every year we get a chance to reevaluate. Like the leadership, the action plan, debrief, whatever. If it's working, everything was great, and we wanted to fund another 10 there. And keep that momentum going and continue to build businesses downtown. And it's not legally, it's not illegal to do that in the equation. And that gives us the opportunity to do that. And think that momentum, if it's not working out, we decide not to fund the next, or any interest in that building. We've got that option too.
So with this one, for instance, let's just say we move to this, it's a max 170, again, a 50%, 25, 10. So anything over 100 or $50,000, they move to 25% reimbursement. So let's say your building, you get approved and it costs $8,000. So you get the 5,000 and then you have to match the other. So it's what, a $6,500 grant. Okay. Then the guy next to you moves out. We've only given that building, that property, $6,500. The next guy comes in, well, they've already gotten 65. Let them do the 50% match until they get up to the $50,000 total grant.
That's what we were saying.
Yeah.
Taking the fund, give it all to one person or one property. That's multiple address.
That's
Right,
exactly
not-
what I was saying.
Right,
Hold
so
on.
Not cheating the system and everybody's
Not
getting.
You go back and call it percentage rather than just the 5,000.
The rule is if you're the tenant, make sure your application's first.
Well, mine was first.
Right.
Now,
Or
can
you were
I,
about to say something else too.
can I ask, what if there was no other tenants in that building and both those other spots were vacant and I was the only guy that was there? How would that be addressed?
Looks like guaranteed success for you.
But there's still 2 other spots there that you guys are gonna have to look at later on down the road.
Right.
That's what Mr. Hayes was saying, that anybody that comes in the future, that property owner is, because he still owns the property, he's getting revenue from you, right?
I mean, he's
Renting his
collecting rent.
place?
Where he puts it, I don't
Right,
know,
so
but-
he's getting revenue, so he's still only entitled, even if 2 additional people come in and rent those other 2 places. Say they want to do 10,000, they don't get 5 right off the bat.
Mhm.
They have to match automatically whatever that 10 is. They don't get that free 5 and then start matching, is what Mr. Hayes was suggesting.
You're gonna get it, but they may not, because they gotta apply just like you did.
Yes, sir.
So the rules that they have to go under, are the rules we're trying to make up right now.
And there is in the scoring rubric, there's, if they've never been awarded, they get more points. So again, this is where this is all going to flesh out, hopefully. But I just need to know, is it 1 grant ever or 1 grant or the max per property?
It's a maximum dollar amount per property.
I agree. So does that mean that the following year, let's say my business improves and I have money to match, could I reapply to do something, to make that building greater?
Yep.
Yes, but in every turn, the property owner is going to have to consent to it.
Correct, yes, sir.
Yep.
And you would match everything beyond that.
Past the 5,000.
that-
So it could be that, let's say you operated in that spot for a very long time and
Right.
nobody ever came in the other spots.
Mhm.
And you ended up using all of the money eventually in that spot. the money's
It's
done.
gone when it's gone.
Right, and the other guys are not gonna be able to get anything.
But it would be up to the property owner to allow you to do that.
Right.
He may say, no, I know I only get 170, so I might want to split it three ways, or he may want to give your portion of the building the whole 170.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Does anybody have any other questions regarding the funding structure, the allocations, the percents, the maximums, the ADA at 25,000?
My only thing with the ADA, do we have some kind of list, some kind of specifications as far as what, I mean, I know that is it still just a code, ADA compliance? If there's steps, then they have a right to put a ramp. Does there have to be a deficiency, in other words?
I will list that out in the document, but yes, there are certain ADA compliance. Anywhere that they can't currently get a wheelchair or those types of needs is where that would fall under. I'm sure there's a list.
Yeah.
Some things are not required at older buildings.
Right.
Leniency give us buildings that exist over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we spent a lot, and I said I was going to do 2 hours. There's a few other things I want to get to. The scoring criteria, I know we've talked about that several times during this meeting. Can we skip to that and go through? Okay, so we know when we're doing it, we know the allocations, and they get here. We have job creation, economic impact, because that should be the most important outside of slum and blight. The property type, again, commercial should be our focus, not residential. Tax-based impact, is this going to increase the property value so that we're getting a return on that in terms of TIF dollars? Readiness, do they have the funding? Are they ready to proceed, or have they not even started the permitting process? I mean, we know that takes a little bit of time. Private match funds, that's how we're going to grow these dollars. We need somebody to match what we're giving them. Most CRAs do not do the 50% or 5,000 at 100%. So I think we're being more than generous there. And then equity and fairness, have they never been awarded before? Is there anything that needs to be added or taken away, or any questions on that?
My only thing is just give us some parameters of what's going to qualify as significant, moderate, minimal, like I said before. Even the tax-based impact, maybe we could put some dollar amounts in there, greater than a certain amount, less than a certain amount between the two amounts, because people's judgment is going to be, pretty different on what they consider. Yes. And then what about public benefit and blight reduction? Should those not be two separate categories?
They could.
Because, I mean, we wouldn't want a severe public benefit. No.
And with that, I was thinking, public benefit, it could be two different things, but is something that was unsightly, not anymore. And that typically makes
my thoughts kind of went,
what public benefit would be, I would assume.
My thoughts kind of went from, like Donaldson Park, the tennis courts are not necessarily slum and blight, but the public benefit of what we're adding there would be a positive. So I would think those would be two different things. I was thinking of it more of a positive thing, adding to, or if it's, multi-use paths or those kinds of projects and things like that, that's adding public benefit, and then removing blight would be something completely different.
But we won't be scoring any of that, correct? It's just grants to private individuals.
But some of their, the space may be a bigger public benefit, but there might not be any blight.
Okay. I can separate that.
Agree with that.
Anybody else on the scoring? To make it fair,
no.
make it fun.
I don't have a question on the scoring, but just if we could just hop up to the paragraph above where it says applications reviewed in a joint advisory / CRA board meeting.
Yep.
Now, during that process, is that going to be like a workshop type thing like we have here? Or is that going to be, and I don't even know, maybe it's not even legally we can do that, but can we have a voting, like, can it be a special meeting with both So we don't have to kick the can down the road a little bit farther?
You can have a special meeting with both where you're able to vote, but this is specifically a workshop.
No, I'm talking
Yep.
about this one on the review.
Right. You can definitely have a joint meeting of both boards where you're both able to vote.
Okay. Okay,
I
I'd-
talked to Jerry about it though, and he said that the CRA board is the one that actually votes. The CRA advisory board is still only able to provide a recommendation.
Right, but they
We
have to
still
vote on
have
the
to vote.
recommendations too. In
They
order for
they
it to come to us.
right
vote.
they would score. I mean, we could all score at the same time. That's not an issue. We could all be in the same room. That's not an issue. But they would still be making a suggestion to us, and then we would still have, us five would still have to. It's not like 12 are voting on the project. It's
Right,
still
that's-
just five.
You are correct. And I just want to be clear that they do vote for their recommendation.
Right.
Amongst,
So they
their
could vote
board.
first,
right,
and then it could be passed to us same night
correct.
to vote also. Yes, yes. I'm trying to avoid, we have a CRA advisory meeting and then 2 weeks later, we have another and there's a question or something arises and we have to kick it back the next month. So I'd like to have both boards be able to vote that one night. Yeah, that's my,
And specifically, when is this?
whenever we have anything that we have to review.
Like for every grant?
She
Whenever we
she
have
wants to
to-
vote one time on February 12th, 2026,
Yeah.
as of right now. She wants to look at all of the grants
Oh, I
on
see.
one day.
Gotcha. Okay.
And have it voted on at one time by both boards.
And another way we could think about that is we could do the scoring. And again, I want this to be something, well, if they want to do a presentation, maybe like 2 or 3 minutes to tell you about their project, that ultimately I think would be a good idea for people to get up and share what they're wanting to do. But you score it. I don't know how long it's going to take, but, and then we could table it enough time to start calculating the scores, because I'm not gonna be able to get those together. I don't think that night, but maybe. But at least get a good idea once you score it to have those conversations about which projects you want to tackle. And then if we wanted to do the final awards, so I had one at the advisory meeting and then one at the CRA board meeting. So how would y'all?
So
wanna
you
do
still, you still want it as two meetings, and you still want us all to be here together as we go through the scoring.
Yeah.
But then we're still going to have a separate meeting where we actually are voting on the final award. That's how you have it set up.
Yeah, I was gonna score all or calculate all the scores and then bring that back to you based on the final decisions.
Okay.
The final awards would be at the
A
CRA.
joint meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just in case you need some time to think about it or talk about it, or again, I don't know how this is gonna work out. No
Right.
idea.
I'm just trying to eliminate the push.
Yeah.
The,
Appreciate
2
it.
weeks here, a month there. God forbid there be questions and now we're at 2 weeks and a month again.
Government is slow.
Well, we
So
shouldn't be.
in terms of timeline, you're good with everybody scoring together, listening to the presentation.
We'll roll the dice and see how this one goes.
Okay, that doesn't help me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with two separate. I feel like if they make a presentation,
It could go wildly different, is all I'm saying.
if they make a presentation, we may want to we may want to drive around what the property is. I mean, I would hope everybody would do their homework beforehand, before we actually sit down and look at the projects. And well, I mean, with actual applications that come in, with what people are submitting, doing their homework and digging into it, not waiting till the night of the meeting to ask all the questions and stuff like that.
The only thing that's good about having the meetings separate as they are is that you have the advisory board meeting. And then, we can come to the advisory board meeting if we want. We can tune in, we can watch it, we can call and ask how it went. I mean, we can look at the results of it before we have our meeting. And that gives us a lot more information to then go research and make sure that we're well informed, not only of what you guys wanted, but what we also want to find out on our own. So
Right. It does give a little more time for questions.
if it takes a little bit longer, I mean, it's probably a good thing, is all I'm saying. I would say both. Like we've done all these years, yeah.
Yeah, the way I have it listed now is we'll all get together I'll present the packages. So we close out the cycle. They can no longer apply after January 31st. And if they do not have a complete package by January 31st, it's not eligible, meaning they can't turn something in on January 31st and I don't have what I need. So then that gives me time to compile all the information, get you the board package in time. And then you get together, you hear the presentations, you score them, and then I can take that back, dismantle all the information, how the scoring fell, give you some time to breathe, think about it, and then come back and I can present the scoring criteria, how everybody landed. And then, I mean, it could be another joint meeting if you want, and then you can give your recommendation and then you guys can give final approval. I'm just trying to prevent multiple meetings.
I agree.
Meeting take place at 10 in the morning. Right for lunch. Yeah, after we score it, after we listen to the presentation.
Some of us are not retired, Jim. I wouldn't be able to do a 10 o'clock meeting.
Okay.
Unless it's on a Saturday.
Unless it's on Saturday, yeah.
After I'll take 44.
Oh, I know it's,
okay.
sorry.
Go ahead, go
I
ahead.
know it's getting late, but one other thing under eligibility, I think we should put in there, and you have owner tenant labor without verifiable invoices. But I don't think we should reimburse owner and tenant labor,
No.
period.
Where are you seeing that?
It's under most of the ones that says not eligible. It's under several different sections for each of the grants, like it's under the facade improvement grant, under not eligible. It's under the interior. It's under, I think it's all under all of the grants. Under the not eligible part, it just says they have to turn in a verifiable invoice, but I don't think any owner or tenant labor should be reimbursed.
Okay, I'll remove without verifiable invoices, because I think I have somewhere in here about DIY. Just like now we offer the opportunity to pay for materials, but we won't pay for labor.
Well, they would be buying the materials from a store though.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm talking about labor, no owner and
Right.
tenant labor.
Right.
Right. But on underneath each of these grants, it says owner and tenant labor is not eligible unless it has a verifiable invoice.
Correct. And what I'm saying is I'll just remove without verifiable invoice. So it says not eligible owner tenant labor.
Yes. Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Got it.
And then under eligible improvements, under the facade improvement grant for professional services, we have architectural engineering and permitting all being an eligible expense. Do we still want to include that as an eligible expense?
Under facade for engineering, you're saying?
It's under facade eligible improvements.
It is an eligible expense. That's up to you if you want to remove that.
Do we need engineering for facade? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because it's not in any of the other ones. So I would think we would take, that would be the least, unless it's some kind of major historical building and they're having to do, I don't know, do you need engineer work for, maybe this is a Rick Hayes question, engineered work for like certain stucco projects on an old building? I mean, I guess you would need it for a roof, obviously. So do we want to include that as being reimbursable?
But in order to get the building permit, wouldn't you need to show the engineering designs if it was?
This
We're
is
talking facade, just the facade.
Okay.
Structural, then yeah. Plan that. Just a facade.
Well-
Painted colors or textures or in a
Why don't we just say that facade is by definition not structural? And then eliminate that.
Okay. All right. And then one other thing, I make a lot of notes, y'all, I'm sorry, but underneath the additional guidelines for the facade, there's a lot in there that seems like it only applies to commercial structures, versus like only commercial structures that are in the historical areas, because there was a lot of criteria that talks about, changes to facades can't remove, alter, damage, or obscure significant architectural features. But do we necessarily care if they change those features if it's not in a historical area? Because this is also for the south side as well. Or do we need to, specify that's Main Street only, or whatever we're considering the historical district? Maybe those guidelines only pertain to that. On page 6 at the top.
I put this in there so we don't have a historical building that's maybe not on a historical register, and then they come in and try to completely modernize it with CRA dollars.
So could we, but like on Main Street though, is that what you're talking about?
Or any facade grant that we decided to fund. Commercial.
So do we need to classify it then, maybe built before a certain time? I think it may tie some people's hands if it's a really old building and it doesn't have any historical significance. It may benefit everybody if they're able to change part of that. I don't know, am I thinking wrong?
Well, I'm just wondering about historical. Are you saying designated as a historical building or our historical building? Not really designated as one on the register. I mean, because all our buildings really are, they're old and they're all historic.
Well, like if we wanted to designate, I'm just thinking there may be some buildings that are not directly on Main Street that would be more beneficial if they're able to be updated.
So you're saying that we need to indicate that it's only on Main Street as opposed to any other building in any of the districts?
We may need to narrow it down a little bit just so we're not tying everybody's hands as far as making major upgrades.
I mean, I'm completely fine with eliminating that term, that paragraph altogether. And then again, when we're doing the presentations, they'll be telling you exactly what they're wanting to do, I assume.
Well, I mean, I think there's a place for it. I think it's important to stay in there, but maybe only for if you want to do it just as those designated on the registry, or those built before a certain date, or those that match the character of the buildings around them. Maybe that's a word that we could use, so that they don't change it to where it looks completely crazy from everybody around them.
Completely fine. I'll add.
We're limiting time frame, right? You can't spend $170,000 on.
As it's written, you can spend it on any of these things. So we might need to, if you want to.
With that, let's say that somebody wanted to do $1 million facade and improvement, which I don't think is going to happen. But if they did, then they would say, I want 170. You would come in and say, we'll give you 50. Right? That's where the scoring comes in.
Well, it's difficult to tell someone no whenever
Right.
they're sitting there giving you a presentation, unless you have very quantifiable reasons why.
Right.
So,
But we're dealing with small buckets of money. So if somebody asks for 170 for a facade,
I can assure you, nobody up here is going to be able to think that far ahead whenever they're standing right there.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
well, I don't see you guys giving $170,000 to a facade grant.
Well, if Mr. Hayes wants, yeah.
Non-structural.
Yeah, I see.
$170,000.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, what do you suggest? You suggest a cap?
Well, there's some major problem structurally with the building that, preclude them from being able to do that.
Any suggested dollar figure? Any suggested dollar figure? 25,000?
the problem with,
Not that being and say, look, this is a special deal, just like you said. You know, under a special provision, we can do more than that, but at least let them know they can't go spend.
Yeah.
Crazy on something. So,
I would be shocked if they're going to spend $1 million on the outside of a building and not spend $1 million inside the building.
no.
It works the opposite. So you always spend more inside than you do outside.
my only consideration for adding caps on one grant is we're gonna need to add them on all. And so what I was trying to do with this is taking a whole building approach where everything someone might need to do with existing buildings, how can we give them availability to? No. I mean, if they're gonna do $1 million paint job, I don't know, there's, yeah.
You can find 2 quotes for anything, I promise.
If we put caps on one, we need to put caps on all of them.
We do have caps on the other, it's 170,000. This is just an additional cap on facades.
That's it.
So you could say of the 170,000, no more than 25 could be spent on the facade
Right.
unless a structural problem exists.
So 25,000 cap on facades.
Correct. Are we going to touch on the public art and the other, or is this saved for another meeting?
We are almost at the 2.5 hour mark. So we'll go through these. Does anybody have any heartache over a demolition grant?
Nope.
No.
No. Does anybody have any heartache over the facade grant?
Not as changed.
So removing professional services and put a $25,000 cap.
Correct.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns over the interior improvement grant?
Not with-
Commercial only.
Not with the 10,000 changes that we made.
Yeah.
And what were those changes? Can you reiterate?
I sure can't. You're gonna have to go back to the minutes on that. My goodness. We talked about that for 2 hours.
Okay, so not specific to the interior grant.
The only thing I know we did with interiors, we just re-emphasized it has to abide by the code. It has to be a code compliant issue. It has to be verifiable from, the building inspector or somebody that it actually is out of compliance. Like the attorney had spoke about. We said only existing buildings. I wrote that note down. No owner, tenant, labor. I think that was most of the notes that I made on that one.
The interior grant. I mean, why wouldn't it cover that? Yeah.
Should cover both, right? It would cover both. Yeah.
We also said just about putting in the specifications, the letter of credit, if it's an amount over $25,000. We talked about that as well. And the lien clause or something, Dr. Kelly said.
All right. Health, safety, wellness, emphasizing that, making it verifiable that the interior improvements need to be done. And I think that's it.
And then one other specification you had on here for individuals as far as any eligibility, you said they had to be current on all taxes, no code violations. I would like to extend that to any of the properties that the person owns. At least in Highlands County. at least in Highlands County.
So you're saying work not compliant with city building codes or
In other words, in order to be eligible, they have to be current on all taxes, no outstanding code violations other than what they are repairing.
I believe that is in the beginning of the handbook, all of those criteria.
I just want to make sure it specifies not just to that particular property that they're doing, it's the owner. Because some owners own multiple properties. Randy's told us many stories.
Understood. We're going to eliminating the name art, public beautification and activation grant. I was speaking with again, a lot of cities do murals and sculptures. Our attorney doesn't feel comfortable with that. So this grant would essentially cover any outside public spaces that would not fall under facade. So why would we partner with them to make the public spaces more beautiful? That's not necessarily their building. So that's what this grant is for nothing that falls underneath facade.
Well, we are running out of time, and I think the last two categories have a lot of stuff to go through. So I would propose either revisiting this in another meeting or running with what we have till the January and visit this while that's happening. And
So is the art, the beautification is, we don't have 10 more minutes, just discuss that one?
it ain't 10 minutes.
It's not 10 minutes, you
No.
don't think?
Because the biggest issue is that there's a lot of legal issues here, and I'd like to go through them all, but there's no way we have time at 7:50. So
For now, and this again, we talked about the window activation grant. That's where this would fall under. It wouldn't be a facade grant. So these vacant buildings that they don't necessarily want to do a facade grant, they don't want to necessarily invest in their buildings. What could we do in terms of to beautify it? Very simply would be to do the window decal stickers that make it look like something's going on in the building. It would not fall under facade. It would fall under something like this. So that was something we had talked about in May. So that's where this would be.
I think we have plenty to start this new process with, so we'll
do as
run with
well.
these, get them ready to go and bring them back for your consideration and adoption.
And so when are we going to finish the rest of this?
Next grant cycle, we'll bring it back up.
I think you mean the actual,
mean-
that
The rest of the presentation, the packet, when are we
Well-
going to finish that?
The two other grants are the ones that are the most difficult
Mhm.
to get through. So what I'm saying is the grants that you all have walked through tonight, that's a really, really good start for us and the businesses on Main Street. And I think we could do a lot of good if this is approved.
yeah, we can go ahead and discuss these during that time. I'm just saying we should
Right.
discuss it, hash it out during that time
But-
between now and January 31st. or whatever.
Exactly, but we are out of time for standing this up and making a meaningful change in this grant cycle. So I would like the opportunity to run with the ones you talked about tonight. And we can further vet these other ones for next grant cycle.
Perfect.
And so before it comes back to us, the CRA attorney will do all of his stuff and go through it with a fine tooth comb and kind of give us his opinions on how we should word things and all that.
So we'll take the conversation we had today. I will make the changes to this packet. It will be sent over to the attorney. The attorney will then make any suggested changes. And at that point, I will bring it to the CRA board, assuming you are all okay with everything we've discussed today, with the changes that were proposed to be made. I will make those changes, bring it to the CRA board. You'll either approve it or you won't. At that point, we'll use that information to draft the updated resolution to get this started.
Perfect. Good.
Thank you very much.
Anything else for the good of the CRA? We'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, please.
Seeing no opposition, we are adjourned.
Thank you.